what's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of Terrible Towel Tuesday. I am your host, SimFBallCritic, and we got a couple little things to talk about, man. You know, this time of the year, you're scrounging, trying to find stuff to talk about, and I try to find little things here and there, man. So I don't know how long this video will be, but I'm just fortunate enough to have you guys come back and return for another episode. So let's talk about a couple things, man. First and foremost, I'll give my quick thoughts on the national anthem. I still haven't dived into the whole thing as far as, you know, the nitty gritty, but I just know the basics. You know, the basic principles are the NFL has decided to put in a policy to where if you're on the field, if you're in the field or the vicinity of the field, you are required to stand for the national anthem. Whereas if, you know, you're not on the field or other areas, but basically they're classifying it as being if you're not on the field, to me it seems like if you're not visible, then you don't have to participate. So basically you have the option to stay in the locker room and whatnot, don't have to participate, but if you're out on the field, you have to stand. Now I'm gonna give you my thoughts on it in general. I'm gonna be real quick on that and then we'll breeze past it. I don't like the NFL and their decisions as far as them being very reactionary. You know, they're always trying to make decisions on the fly, and to me, they don't just stick firm to one thing. Now, we could argue how we feel about the national anthem. I'm not going to get into that. I don't want to bog you guys down with that. But to me, implementing a policy where you must stand, and, you know, that kind of goes against the you know, basically what was fought for in this country, giving you the right to do what you want to do. You know, you can either stand or not. I get that. You know, keep the politics out of football. I understand that. It's a business thing, guys. We all know what it is. Let's keep it real. You know, it's all about business and it's all about optics. And that's why the NFL did what they did. They chumped their way out of it. It is what it is. But I just feel like, man, it sucks to put a rule on something that you are actually able to do as an American citizen. But then on the outside looking in, I look at another side of things. I think it makes it worse. I think it now makes it worse. Because now the talk is going to be who stayed in the locker room and who didn't. So now in every press conference, they're going to ask either why did you stay in the locker room, or why did so-and-so stay in the locker room, or why did you feel like you needed to come on the field? So I think it makes the team divisive, and, you know, and not even, you know, it's not going to be divisive purposely by the players, but it's automatically going to be divisive because, again, there's going to be a section of people who are not going to participate, and there are going to be some that do, and then all these narratives are going to arise out of that. And I just think it doesn't, you know, to me, it doesn't solve the situation, nor the problem, nor, again, is anybody recognizing the initial reason why guys were protesting in the first place. You know, it has nothing to do with patriotism or being patriotic at all. It's just that narrative that was spun on it, you know, by those who want to spin it and have that kind of narrative. So there it is. But let's get past that, man. Let's talk about some Steelers news, guys. So not necessarily Steelers news, but I would like for it to be, if possible. We all know Mychal Kendricks now has been released by the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's funny, man, because this is a guy that, you know, I believe I've mentioned before here on the show. If not, I know I've talked about this on Twitter. Mychal Kendricks is the type of guy that you look at, you know, when it gets around that time of the season off season, when you start saying, okay, who could end up being a cap casualty, you know, a veteran. And you look at positions like that. A lot of times it's linebacker or, you know, a corner or, you know, somebody like that, a safety or a D lineman where there's depth on a team. And you start looking around and saying, okay, out of these, you know, this particular team and how their roster is currently constructed, how, you know, do you think certain guys will play into affecting the cap? And who would be a cap casualty? So Mychal Kendricks was the guy that I identified a while back. I thought even maybe they should trade for him early on. And I know Dave said that on their podcast as well back in March, I want to say. That could have been an idea as well. Maybe trade for him if you could have got him for cheap and things of that nature had the Eagles not cut him. But now that he's released, I would love to have Mychal Kendricks on the roster. But here's the thing. We have to think about a couple things here. How much is it going to cost him? You know, cost us to get him? That's first and foremost. Will it cost a whole lot? No. With the Steelers' current cap situation, which I believe is just a little over $5 million, if I'm hearing correctly, I don't know for sure. And let me be the first one to say this. Maybe some of you guys can break it down for me. Help me out in this regard. I have no idea how this cap stuff works in terms of how it affects the cap number when you sign someone and when you offer a signing bonus. Because we often hear that teams will elect to do a signing bonus, which is upfront money, or however they want to construct it, and it limits the cap. So, from what I'm hearing, I even heard on the Terrible Podcast today, they were saying that there's more than enough money to sign him, even to a 2-year, I think they said $8 million deal or somewhere right around there. And again, I want to know how does the cap part come into play with that? Because it definitely doesn't seem like it's apples to apples in terms of money. It definitely doesn't seem that way. It seems like you're able to sign with someone, again, with say $5 million, give them an $8 million deal, and make you turn some of it into a signing bonus, and then it seems like it has very little effect on the cap. So if any of you guys can explain that to me, I would love to hear it. But either way, I've heard it in multiple places, a couple different sites and locations I've seen it on, where they said the Steelers do have enough money to, offer Mychal Kendricks, if they're interested, in a deal such as that. A 2-year, $8 million deal, something like that. Because I believe his contract would have had him, making about $5 or $6 million, this upcoming season, if I'm not mistaken. So you would assume they'll be able to finagle it some kind of way. They'll give X amount per year, but then they make the other amount the bonus, whatever. But the important part is they're saying that the Steelers, have enough money to do it. So here's the question. Excuse me. Do they do it? I don't know if it's maturity, guys, or if it's just me just growing as a fan over the years, but I start to take my personal feelings out of it when we talk about players and who the Steelers should get and, whether they should be somebody we'll have. And I look at more factors, man. I look at the business side of things. I look at, the scouting side of things and, how the team may view a player and does the team feel like this is a guy that comes in and starts? Do they feel like it's a guy that's going to be a backup? Do they feel like it's a guy that, let's say they give him a 2-year deal, is this somebody that they think they could sign again after that? Is this a guy that's worth X amount of dollars for X amount of years? Multiple factors. Now, us as fans, we could sit down, excuse me, guys, allergy season. We could sit down as fans, man, and say who we want, all we want, but we don't know the ins and outs. We don't know how teams value a player. To us, we're all saying, hey, I think Mychal Kendricks would be an upgrade. I do. Just based off the player that I know he can be. He hasn't been as impactful these last couple years as he once was. But then again, I don't know if that's because of his playing time was reduced. And again, why was his playing time reduced? It's a lot of different factors. Was it the scheme that he was playing in, which I know he's accustomed to a 3-4, but the way the Eagles played defense, was he not as effective in the last couple years of his contract as he possibly could be somewhere else? These are all questions we don't know. But it's very easy for us to say they should go after him. I see people saying they're stupid if they don't get him. But again, people don't consider all of the factors, and people often don't consider the cap space and things of that nature, even though I just alluded to the fact that they have enough. But still, we don't know what the Steelers' plans are right now. What we do know, though, inside linebacker, as well as outside linebacker, is thin. So if there's a guy out there that can help, and I think Mychal Kendricks has a lot of value, again, I'm not saying he's going to be a world beater. I'm not saying he's going to change everything and make the defense 100 times better. I'm just saying I definitely believe that Mychal Kendricks has capabilities based off of the player that I've seen play over the last several years, as well as I think could he not be as good or better as a Jon Bostic from what we know about Jon Bostic? Could he be as good or better as a Vince Williams? Those are questions we really can ask ourselves and probably say, possible. Because it's not like we have these dynamic players at inside linebacker. It's not like we have Luke Kuechly out there. It's not like Ryan Shazier is still on the roster. You know what I'm saying? As far as being able to play. It's not like we have a Patrick Willis type of guy. Or Sean Lee type of guy. These guys that you know for sure are difference makers. You can't necessarily say that about Jon Bostic. You definitely can't say that, in my opinion, about Vince Williams. Solid players, yes, but difference makers, not necessarily. So it's not outside of the realm of comprehension that a Mychal Kendricks could come in and take one of those spots. I say, man, if the Steelers are looking at him, if they value him, go ahead and snatch him up if you can. You know, you make it fair for everybody, fair on their business side, fair on his side, as far as being paid. Great. If we can make that happen, I would welcome Mychal Kendricks with open arms and hope that he's able to come in and be a difference maker. Now, here's the thing. I've seen some people say that they probably won't sign him to be a backup. I could kind of agree with that, but let's take a look at our depth chart, guys. Right now, right behind, Vince and John Bostic is Medikevich. How do we feel about Medikevich? How do we feel about Dirty Red? Then you got guys like, and I can't remember, I don't know if LJ Ford is actually still on the team or not. I can't remember. So forgive me for that, because I know sometimes, people will comment and say, oh, you're wrong. Like last week, apparently I said Terrell Watson was still on the roster and he wasn't, and I got killed for it. I'm like, geez. I mean, if you are perfect, I appreciate you. I am not. But I thank you for the feedback anyway. So I don't know if LJ Ford is still on the roster, but hey, it gets very thin after that. We got Matthew Thomas from Florida State again. I think he has potential, but we all know, the baggage he comes with. If you can get Mychal Kendricks, what would be the disadvantage of paying a guy that amount, roughly, again, 2 years, $8 million, something like that? What would be the disadvantage of, paying him, and even if he doesn't start, he's going to be a rotational piece, and we need coverage. We need backup in that area. We need to be covered with some depth, because what happened last year when Shazier went down, we're not talking about that enough. We bring in a guy like Sean Spence. I understand he knew the defense, but come on. No disrespect to Sean Spence, but hey, man, he's not an elite player. He's not a great player in the NFL. I mean, you guys know my motto, man. I won't call a professional athlete a bum, because, hey, they made it. They made it to the NFL further than I ever got. But I can definitely be fair and judge them accordingly amongst their peers. And Sean Spence is not a great linebacker amongst his peers. We all can see that. So, do you want to end up in that situation again? What would be the problem with having that kind of depth? Again, a John Bostic, which we're hoping he's going to stay healthy and bring something to the table, because this guy can play the run. He had a fairly good year with the Indianapolis Colts before, the last couple games, and he claims, he could have came back for the last game. I'll take his word on that, but he had a solid year. I'll take an inside linebacker like that, better than what we saw on our team. And Vince Williams is serviceable. And then let's say, again, you get a rotational piece like Mychal Kendricks. I take that. It's clear that we don't have that freak of an athlete at that position no more. Whether you hate or love Ryan Shazier, Shazier wasn't a finished product. Shazier wasn't perfect, but Shazier was a difference maker. He was an impact player. No doubt about it. We don't have that no more. So I just want as many solid guys as I can get. I'll take that and be happy. All right, so that's my thing on Mychal Kendricks. Hey, if we can get him, and if the Steelers are showing interest and y'all can make it happen, you get both of these from me. Let's do it. All right. So what else we're going to talk about, guys? Really quick. Not too much more to talk about here. I'm going to botch his name, but I did read an article on Ola Adeniyi. I don't know exactly how he pronounces it, but that's the outside linebacker from Toledo. Some of you guys know who that is, a UDFA. He says he models his game after James Harrison. Hey, man, with him being relatively undersized, I don't believe he's as small as James Harrison was in terms of, height and things of that nature. I want to say this guy's about 6'1", maybe something like that. I could be off. He could be a little more than that, but he's not the biggest outside linebacker. He's not the prototypical pass rusher, but hey, if you can model your game behind James Harrison, I'll take that any day. So maybe he turns out to be a special piece, or, maybe he turns out to be James Harrison, taking the same route and to get into the NFL. I would love that. Again, we know Keon Adams, and, I've talked about this so much the last couple weeks, but at this point, man, we still have to wait and see what things are going to be. Excuse me. We got to wait and see. It's OTAs, they're starting up again this week. And the last thing I was going to actually talk about is JuJu Smith-Schuster. I know there was some concern that he didn't practice last week, and I believe he's back this week. I haven't really seen any confirmation of that as of yet. When I recorded this video, obviously you guys are going to see it later in the evening, but I believe he's back. I saw him mention something on Instagram that he says back in Pittsburgh tomorrow, and that was yesterday. So I believe he's back, but he had videos showing, it was like a cut up of him working out. Looks like he was working out at UFC. So again, remember guys, these things are voluntary. Some players need to be at OTAs, some players should be at OTAs, and some players not really a big effect whether they're there or not. So it's not a huge deal. But I don't think it's much to talk about there. I know some people were saying hopefully he's not injured. I don't think there's anything to that. I think, again, it was just a voluntary thing. He didn't come last week. Clearly he was working out. And if he is going to be there this week, then it's a non-issue. Let's see. The only other thing I did want to talk about, just circling back, man, to the national anthem. Again, what sucks about it is, like I said, it's just going to create news for no reason. Now, some people can say that he brought this on himself, but in case you guys haven't seen it, Antonio Brown took a picture on a knee. He wasn't in the stadium or anything like that. It was just basically an Instagram post, and he said, send Christopher Johnson the invoice. Now, if you guys that don't know, that's the Jets owner who said that for any of his players that are fined, if they kneel or what have you, or whatever the rule is that will give them a fine, he would pay their fine. So he's in favor of the players being able to do what they want to do peacefully. So Antonio Brown was making light of that situation. Now, of course, the way the media spun it was he's already telling people what he plans to do. And I'm like, listen, it could be, it might not be. That's, it's just crazy how, again, this situation is going to create all of this unnecessary news, unnecessary questions asked, and unnecessary pinning players against each other. You watch. And the NFL has actually think that they've solved something, trying to play both sides of the fence. Oh, let's do for the players, let's do for the owners. It's just crazy, man. To me, I just feel like it should have been a non-issue. It is what it is. You maybe could have found a better way to handle it, but it's just crazy. And I have to say that piece because it's not going to solve the problem, in my opinion. So we'll see. But that's about it, guys. There's nothing else to talk about, man. Hopefully we have some more information to address come next week. Maybe we're talking about a signing, maybe Mychal Kendricks, somebody like that. It's a tough time of the year, man, because what's probably going to happen, let's end it with this. What's probably going to happen is a lot of teams are going to get through OTAs. They're going to look and see what they have at each position, might even get through some of their mandatory mini camps, as well as get through or partially through training camps, see what they have before they reach out to some of these veterans. And I think that's what kind of sucks, man, with the way the Eagles handled Kendrick's situation. They could have designated, I think they could have did like a June 1st designation or something, which ain't that far away. That would have been more advantageous for him. But hey, man, it's a business, I guess. But I just think he's going to be put in a tough spot because at this moment, I think teams are definitely going to wait and see what they have. Same thing I feel about Dez Bryant. A team probably will scoop him later, but there's no immediate rush to grab these guys now, right? Fresh out the draft, fresh out in OTAs. You wait and see what you got, rank your players, and then you go after a veteran. So maybe we'll grab a guy like Kendricks late. All in all, if we can get a guy like that before we go into the season, I'd love to have him. I would welcome him with open arms. Come on, buddy. Come on to Pittsburgh. But all right, man, that's going to do it, guys. I appreciate you guys coming through, man. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Cut on your notifications. Hit that like button. And I'll be back at you next week with another episode of Terrible Towel Tuesday. All right? Until next time, here we go, Steelers. Catch you later. Peace.